Over the past year or so, basically since owning a Nintendo Switch, I've developed a real love for a style of game that are known as Metroidvanias. Now, a lot of people feel about this term the way I feel about the term Souls-like. Naming a genre of game after what it influences, rather than what it is, can be unhelpful and a touch cringy at times. A couple of years ago, it was all the rage to call any games that was remotely difficult as Souls-like, one writer even going as far as calling Project Cars 2 the Dark Souls of racing games, a tangent that never needed to have been gone along. However, that said, I feel like there is something to the term Metroidvania. It captures games that hark back to a particular era of gaming, where simplicity could simultaneously give rise to some really cool depth and complexity. The term Metroidvania refers to games which are inspired by and follow the formula laid out by games like Konami's Castlevania series or Nintendo's Metroid. The simple 2D games that are often side-scrolling and feature pixelated graphics, platforming, and easy to learn hard to master combat. Metroidvania games often take place within a large, intertwined game world, parts of which you'll access later in the game when you learn new abilities or gain a new item. This means you'll come to get used to certain areas of the game as you backtrack through them to access secrets or new areas later on. The levels often contain major platforming elements, and exploration of levels is often rewarded. Combat is a key component of any good Metroidvania. Some feature high-octane shootouts and bullet dodging, while others go for a more patient approach, favouring sword-based combat or other high fantasy weaponry. Weirdly enough, a lot of recent Metroidvania style games, such as Blasphemous or Hollow Knight, are considered Souls-like, and whilst there's clearly some homage to the Dark Souls series in games like this, Dark Souls itself was inspired by the Metroidvania's penchant for difficult bosses, an interconnected game world and soft locks, not to mention the first Dark Souls reward for exploration. But enough about what Metroidvanias are. What is it that makes them so good, and why do I keep coming back to them? Well, for this, I need to go back to my childhood. See, I had a Sega Mega Drive when I was a kid, or it's called a Genesis if you're watching in the US. I loved it. I fondly remember so many classic games. I was obsessed with Sonic the Hedgehog, blown away by Jungle Strike, and enamoured with Ayrton Senna's Super Monaco GP2. These were my go-to titles when I was a young'un. But then, in Christmas of 1997, my parents bought me a PlayStation, and my tiny mind was blown. I soon forgot about the world of the 2D and 16-bit, and was more interested in this new style of pre-rendered backgrounds, cinematic camera angles, and at that time, epic graphics. When it came to the PS1, I was playing Tekken, Final Fantasy VII, and I was watching my dad play games such as Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and Alone in the Dark. It was like a pre-internet Let's Play, sitting and watching my dad play for an hour or so every night. I loved it all, and I was well and truly on the bleeding edge of console gaming at the time. So I stuck with it. I had a PS2, PS3, PS4, eventually a high-end gaming PC, and I was playing all the latest titles in glorious style. But after a back catalogue of amazing titles, I was sat on my PC one day and had the urge to play Ayrton Senna's Super Monaco GP2 again, so I emulated it. I even installed a patch which made the teams and drivers match those that raced in the 91-92 season, rather than the unlicensed ones of the original game. On the back of this, I played Castlevania Bloodlines, and had a fucking whale of a time. I replayed Sonic the Hedgehog and Golden Axe, and then came to realise something. This wasn't just nostalgia driving me on. I had been actually yearning for these types of games again, their simplicity and richness, challenge and reward. The levels are always so well designed and the settings totally memorable. This is often a conscious decision, as you have to backtrack to revisit levels so frequently they're made to feel and look interesting and draw you in. The maps are interconnected in such a clever and considered way, you often get that "oh, I'm back here again" moment, and feel like you've emerged from the abyss and are back on familiar ground, even though previously this earlier portion of the game was the abyss you had delved into. Hand in hand with this, the stories of Metroidvania games are often super interesting, keeping you involved and connected with the game world, and constantly motivating you to move forward for answers. This is really apparent in Hollow Knight, where you form a connection with your tiny little sword-wielding bug of a player character and you begin to care about their adventure. You're invested in them. In some cases, the soundtrack helps a great deal with this, and you may know from my game reviews that I'm a sucker for a good soundtrack. Blasphemous stands out as a shining example of a fantastic Metroidvania with an absolutely mesmerising soundtrack. What these games manage to achieve with a 2D side-scrolling game design is often breathtaking. The game worlds, art style, character development, plot and exploration all in abundance, yet taking place within such a simple template that it's immensely difficult not to be impressed. But aside from clever design, there's something else that keeps me coming back to these types of games. They are incredible value for money. Nowadays, they tend to be developed by independent developers, and the titles are priced accordingly. I paid something like £6 for Hollow Knight on Steam and got so many hours of gameplay out of it. Same goes for Blasphemous, which I paid a little over £14 for on the Nintendo eShop, and I've clocked up around 35 to 40 hours of game time. Axiom Verge was a steal at $7.99, and I got the Castlevania Anniversary Collection for $15.99. My point is, Metroidvania games tend to be dirt cheap and last a whole hell of a lot longer than a lot of AAA titles. Essentially, what you get with a Metroidvania game is a clever, challenging and worthwhile experience that harks back to an era when gaming was substance over style. Not to say that modern gaming isn't substantial, or that there aren't titles out there that are mind-blowing on the next gen. However, Metroidvanias offer so much with so little, and for me have filled a void that I realise has been missing from next gen gaming for a while. You see, I spent a lot of time over the last few years with games like Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and the Dark Souls series, not to mention games like Monster Hunter World and Neo. I've ploughed so much of my time into these titles, it goes beyond belief. But sometimes, if you're anything like me, and you grew up with those old school gaming systems, you may want something a little simpler, something that gives you that vibe and feeling that you had when you were younger. Metroidvanias are perfect for this, influenced by days gone by, whilst also innovating and assimilating with modern technology. They're usually always an incredible experience that stay with you in the same way those old school titles have. If you need a break from the AAA and you're in for something that gives you that feeling you had from games when you were young, perhaps Metroidvanias are the way to go for you, as they have been for me. Everything about them, from their design and their aesthetic to their lifespan and price tag, are absolute gaming virtues. I've been playing a lot of these titles and look forward to many more hours spent jumping, shooting or slashing and navigating my way through some clever levels, all set to a great soundtrack, all for a price that means I can still afford to eat this month. Metroidvania may be a bit of a cringy term sometimes, but these types of games offer me what I value most in gaming: memories.